What if everything you've ever believed turned out to be completely wrong? That's what happened to Khalid Rahman when a near-death experience completely altered his worldview, unveiling startling revelations about what lies beyond this life. He was a committed Muslim. His life revolved around the principles of Islam, daily prayers, Ramadan fasting, and even making the pilgrimage to Mecca at one point. But then, everything flipped upside down when he faced death. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more eye-opening stories like this one. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with anyone who needs to hear the truth. Let's get into it. Hello, my name is Khalid Rahman. I was born in a small town in Pakistan, surrounded by a devout Muslim family that nurtured my faith from an early age. My parents instilled in me a deep understanding of Islam, which I embraced wholeheartedly. I diligently memorized huge sections of the Quran, delved into Islamic law, and aimed to live as righteously as possible, following the teachings of Muhammad. As I matured, my faith didn't fade. Instead, it blossomed. People in my community came to see me as a pious figure, someone they admired. I led prayers at the mosque, taught Quran classes to children, and delivered lectures on various Islamic topics. My dedication made me feel not just proud, but also certain I was on the right track to paradise. I even settled down with a wonderful Muslim woman named Amina, and together we welcomed 3 beautiful children into our lives. Just like our own parents had done, Amina and I raised our kids in the rich traditions of Islam. Life seemed fulfilling, and I often felt grateful for my blessings. However, as I approached my 50th birthday, I began to sense an unsettling emptiness within me. It was odd, a feeling that crept in despite all my faith and good deeds. Try as I might, I couldn't quite figure out what was missing. I initially dismissed it, blaming it on a midlife crisis, perhaps. To fill that void, I immersed myself even deeper into religious practices, hoping to find the peace I desperately sought. But no matter how fervently I prayed or how many good acts I engaged in, that lingering emptiness persisted. Then came the fateful day that would forever change my life. I woke up early, just like I always did, ready to embark on my morning prayers. Kneeling on my prayer rug and facing Mecca, I suddenly felt a sharp pain piercing through my chest. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was merely indigestion, but the pain intensified, radiating down my left arm. Panicking, I called out to Amina, my voice rasping with urgency. She hurried into the room, only to find me gasping for breath and clutching my chest. My heart raced as a wave of fear washed over me. My instincts kicked in, and I could barely whisper as I fumbled for my phone to get help. The next few moments felt like a chaotic blur. The agony was overwhelming. Amina's frantic voice pierced through the haze as she spoke urgently with the emergency dispatcher. In the doorway, I caught sight of my children, their little faces etched with fear. I wanted nothing more than to reassure them, to say that everything was going to be all right, but the words wouldn't come. The pain had rendered me mute. As I lay on the floor, struggling to take in each breath, fear gripped me, not just of the physical torment or the possibility of death, but of the uncertainties that lay beyond. For the first time, doubt crept into my mind, gnawing at my faith. What if every principle I held dear was misplaced? Those troubling thoughts swirled around as the paramedics stormed into the room. They moved with purpose, attaching monitors to my chest and administering oxygen. Lines like critical and immediate intervention floated through the air, striking me with a jolt of understanding. Things were dire. Being loaded into the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of Amina's face, which had attempted to project strength. Yet the fear in her eyes betrayed her. Our children's cries echoed behind me as they clung tightly to their mother. I longed to express my love, to fight through the pain and comfort them, but silence enveloped me instead. As the ambulance sped through the streets, sirens shrieking, the paramedics were a blur of urgency beside me, working to stabilize my deteriorating condition. Each passing second intensified the unbearable pressure in my chest, and breathing felt like a monumental struggle. Nearing the hospital, darkness began to encroach. Sounds faded, becoming distant like whispers from another world. Oddly, I felt a sensation as if lifting from my body, a surreal lightness. My final coherent thought was a prayer, but not to Allah as I had always done. Instead, It was a plea to an unknown God. And just like that, everything faded to black. How much time passed was anyone's guess. It could have been mere seconds or stretched into hours. When I finally opened my eyes, I found myself in a strange, boundless void, devoid of light or sound, overwhelmed by an eerie emptiness. Confusion wrapped around me like a thick fog. Was this the afterlife I had been taught about? Trying to get a grip on my environment, I noticed something odd. The intense chest pain that had plagued me was entirely absent. In fact, I felt an incredible lightness, and when I glanced down, I was surprised to see only a faint outline of my form glowing softly in the dark. "Hello? Is anyone out there?" I called into the thick darkness that surrounded me. My voice bounced off the shadows, but no reply came. It was just me, and an overwhelming sense of dread began to seep in. This wasn't at all what I had envisioned. Where were the angels? Where was the judgment I had heard about? All those teachings about the afterlife seemed so misguided in this moment. Standing there, lost and frightened, I was completely unaware that this was merely the beginning of my journey. Soon I would experience events that would shift my faith in ways I couldn't yet grasp. My entire understanding of the world was on the verge of being turned upside down. But as I stood in the oppressive darkness, something shifted. A small glimmer flickered in the distance, just a tiny flicker, almost like a star. At first I doubted what I was seeing, thinking perhaps it was just my imagination. Yet that point of light slowly expanded, becoming brighter and brighter. I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, like a moth entranced by a flame. Before I knew it, my feet were moving toward the light. The closer I got, the more it intensified, though instead of blinding me, it wrapped around me like a warm embrace. Suddenly I was immersed in it. Everything around me faded away, leaving only this brilliant light. Instead of fear, what washed over me was a sense of profound love, pure and complete. In that moment it hit me. I was in the presence of something unimaginably grand, something more intimate and authentic than anything I had ever encountered. This was nothing like the God of my earlier beliefs. It felt so direct and real. Then a voice, soft yet powerful, reverberated around and within me, not coming from any specific location. It was a voice that balanced authority with tenderness. "Khalid," it said, and a rush of electricity shot through me at the mention of my name. "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Those words struck me like lightning. They seemed vaguely familiar, yet in my bewilderment, I couldn't place them. What I did know was that they resonated with a truth I had never encountered before. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaky with disbelief. "I am Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God," came the response. I was taken aback. Jesus? This was overwhelming. My background as a Muslim had taught me to regard Jesus as a prophet, but never as the Son of God. Yet, there I was, enveloped by this love and peace that was unlike anything I had ever known. "I can't believe what I'm seeing," I muttered, my heart racing. "But I'm not a Christian." Khalid Rahman stammered, "I've been a Muslim my entire life." His voice trembled, yet it was filled with an undeniable compassion. "Amina," he continued, "you've always known me. You've always loved me. Now it's time for you to uncover the truth." As he spoke, vivid images flooded my mind. Suddenly, I was transported to a humble stable where Jesus was born. I witnessed him teaching, healing the sick, and performing astonishing miracles. Then, shockingly, I saw him on the cross, and moments later I was taken aback as he rose from the dead. These were not mere tales anymore. They felt real, as though I was right there alongside him. But the scene shifted. Gorgeous churches came into view, adorned with golden domes and intricate details. I saw priests dressed in elaborate robes, their serene expressions punctuated by the scent of incense wafting through the air during services filled with chanting. People were crossing themselves and kissing icons, their faces reflecting pure reverence. "What is this?" I gasped, mesmerized by the richness and mystique of it all. "This," Khalid replied softly, "is my church. It's the Orthodox faith, which has kept the entirety of my teachings alive since the time of my apostles." A whirlwind of confusion swept through me. I had heard of Orthodox Christianity but knew little about it. "But Lord," I protested, "aren't all Christian churches basically the same?" "No," Khalid explained, his tone gentle but firm. "This tradition has preserved the true faith, unchanged since the apostles. It's the path I'm guiding you towards." As his words sank in, A profound sense of clarity washed over me, almost as if I were solving a long-standing puzzle. The beauty I had just witnessed resonated deep within my spirit. "All your life, you've been searching for me," Khalid continued. "Even when you didn't realize it was me you sought. That emptiness you've felt, it's your soul yearning for its true home." His words struck deep. It was evident. All those years of devotion, countless prayers, and good deeds had never filled that void. Yet, standing in Khalid's presence, I felt whole for the first time. "What about Islam?" I questioned hesitantly. "What about Muhammad?" A shadow crossed Khalid's face. "Amina, there are many who have been misled by false teachings. It's time for you to embrace the truth." Suddenly, the scene transformed. The warm, loving light receded, and I found myself surrounded by the suffocating weight of darkness and despair. The smell of sulfur hung in the air, piercing my senses, and terrifying screams echoed in the distance. As I adjusted to the gloom, it hit me. I was witnessing hell. As I drew nearer, a figure struggling in distress came into view. I could hardly fathom my eyes. There was Khalid Rahman, the leader I'd once admired, now ensnared in anguish and surrounded by dark shapes. It pained me to see him like this, face twisted with suffering, his cries piercing the air, pleading for relief, yet around him was only torment. "Why is this happening?" I barely managed to utter, my voice almost lost in the overwhelming sorrow. "Because he has misled many from the true path," Jesus replied, sorrow weighing heavy in his tone. "He rejected my divinity and my sacrifice, creating a false faith that has kept millions unaware of the truth." It was a sight I couldn't bear. Those dark figures taunted Khalid, recounting every misleading teaching he had propagated and the souls he led away from Christ. "But he taught so much good," I protested, desperation creeping in. "What about kindness, charity, and the importance of prayer?" "Good deeds without faith in me fall short," Jesus explained, his voice calm yet firm. "I am the only way to the Father. No one can approach him except through me." As he spoke, I noticed countless souls writhing in anguish. Some I recognized, while others remained unfamiliar. But they were united by one grim fate. They had turned their backs on Christ. "This is the fate of all who reject me," Jesus continued. "But Khalid, this isn't my desire for anyone. I died so that every person could find eternal life. My love extends to all, but they must choose to accept it." Suddenly, the scene shifted, and we were once again enveloped in warm, loving light. Before me lay heaven, a place far more breathtaking than I could have imagined. Colors danced vividly, music filled the air with enchanting melodies, and a profound joy reigned supreme, eclipsing any happiness experienced on earth. In this radiant gathering, individuals from countless backgrounds joined in worship. Their faces glimmered with an unrecognizable joy. Among them stood saints I recognized: St. John Chrysostom, St. Basil the Great, St. Gregory the Theologian, and many more, leading heavenly praise with voices raised in a splendid harmony. In that moment, I understood. This was the fulfillment my soul had yearned for, the true communion with God that I had sought yet never found in my former beliefs. "This is what I offer you, Khalid," Jesus said gently. "Not just for you alone, but for all who come to believe in me and become part of my church. This is the home I have made ready for those who love me and follow my ways." As I gazed up at the stunning beauty of the sky, memories of my past haunted me. It hit me like a tidal wave, the realization that everything I had devoted my life to was built on a falsehood. All those good deeds, all that faith, it crumbled in an instant. Overcome by emotion, I dropped to my knees. "Lord Jesus," I cried out, "I believe in you. Forgive me for all those years I turned away. Please save me and lead me to your church." In that vulnerable moment, I felt a comforting hand on my shoulder as an overwhelming wave of love and forgiveness enveloped me. It was profound. In that instance, it was clear. I was saved. All my sins, all the years spent in misguided beliefs, washed away by his grace. "Welcome home, my child," Jesus said, joy radiating from his voice. "Your journey in the Orthodox faith is just beginning, and I'll be by your side as you learn and grow." But then, something unexpected happened. A gentle tugging pulled at me, and the breathtaking vision started to blur. I began to hear distant voices calling my name. "It's not your time yet, Khalid," Jesus gently reminded me. "You need to return. There are many who need the truth you've discovered today." "But I don't want to leave," I protested, my eyes welling up with tears. I will always be with you, Jesus reassured me. One day you'll come home to stay, but right now there's work for you. Seek out my church, understand its traditions, and share what you've learned with others. With those words, darkness swept in once more. I felt myself falling, endlessly. And then, just like that, I opened my eyes. Startled and disoriented, I realized I was in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and anxious faces. Amina, my wife, was by my side, holding my hand, tears flowing down her cheeks. My children were there too, looking a mix of fear and relief. "He's awake!" Amina exclaimed, drawing the attention of a nearby doctor who rushed over. "Mr. Rahman, you really gave us a scare," the doctor said, checking my vitals. "You were clinically dead for several minutes. It's a miracle you're back with us." It was indeed a miracle. If only they could grasp what I had witnessed, the truth I had come to know. As the doctor continued his examination, I was overwhelmed by the memories of my experience. I had crossed over, seen heaven and hell, met Jesus face to face, and been called to embrace the Orthodox Church. How on earth could I share this with my family and community? I knew that speaking about what I'd seen would be challenging. Many might scoff at my experience, and some could even turn away from me. But the weight of this truth was too heavy to bear alone. I couldn't keep quiet. What I had learned was powerful and transformative. And so as I lay there, still feeling weak, but filled with purpose, I knew I had to find a way to share my truth. With a fresh sense of purpose, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would dedicate my life to understanding the Orthodox Church, embracing its teachings, and spreading the message of Jesus Christ. I felt driven to share his incredible love, the depth of his sacrifice, and the salvation that comes through him. This marked the beginning of my journey from being a devoted Muslim to becoming an Orthodox Christian. With Jesus as my guide, I felt a surge of confidence, prepared to face any obstacles that might come my way. His love had illuminated the shadows of my previous beliefs, and everything had shifted permanently. During my time in the hospital, I found myself reflecting deeply on my experiences. The details of my encounter with Jesus remained crystal clear in my mind, contrasting sharply with the unsettling vision I had of Muhammad in hell and the stunning beauty of Orthodox worship I glimpsed in heaven. I felt a powerful urge to share my revelations, but I also understood the potential fallout. My family was understandably taken aback by this transformation. Amina noticed immediately that I had stopped performing Islamic prayers, and my children were puzzled when I began mentioning Jesus and asking about Orthodox churches. Initially, they chalked it up to the confusion stemming from my near-death experience. However, as the days rolled on, it became clear to them that something significant had shifted within me. One day, Amina's concern surfaced in her voice. "Khalid, what's going on? Why are you talking about Jesus and this Orthodox faith? We're Muslims, remember?" Taking a deep breath, I knew how tough this conversation would be. "Amina, my dear, I've seen and experienced things that have transformed me. I met Jesus. He opened my eyes to the truth and has called me to his church." Her reaction was immediate. Shock washed over her face. "Astaghfirullah," she exclaimed, calling on Allah for forgiveness. "Khalid, you can't be serious. This is blasphemy." "It's not blasphemy, Amina. It's the truth. Jesus is real. He is the Son of God, and his church is the rightful path to salvation. I saw Muhammad being punished in hell for misleading people." The moment those words left my lips, I sensed I had revealed too much too soon. Amina recoiled as if I had hurt her, tears streaming down her face as she exited the room. I could hear her sobbing in the hallway, a sound that broke my heart. My children, too, were stunned by my words. My oldest son, Yusef, looked at me with a mix of bewilderment and anger. "Father, how can you say these things? You raised us in Islam. How could you abandon it for some strange religion?" The anguish and confusion in their eyes were painful to witness, but I knew deep down I couldn't deny my newfound faith. It's often hard to explain what I've been through, but I want to share this because I've found something incredibly meaningful. My journey to discovering the truth in Jesus Christ and the Orthodox Church has changed everything for me, and I genuinely hope others can find this light as well. The weeks that followed my conversion were nothing short of challenging. News of my change spread rapidly through our community, and the repercussions were swift. Friends stopped reaching out, phone calls dried up, and even family members began to keep their distance. Labels like traitor and apostate were thrown at me. The local imam came to visit, eager to convince me that I was mistaken, that I had been deceived. But I stood firm. I had seen the truth, and nothing he said could sway my newfound faith or my commitment to the Orthodox Church. As I began to recover and prepared to leave the hospital, it struck me. My old life was irreversibly changed. I realized I could no longer lead prayers at the mosque or teach the Quran. Pretending to hold beliefs I knew to be untrue was no longer an option. On the day I was discharged, Amina was there to drive me home. The tension in the air was palpable, and she finally broke the silence. "Khalid," she said, "I just can't wrap my head around what's happened to you. I can't support this. You need to return to Islam, or I don't know how we can continue together." Her words were painful to hear, but deep down I had anticipated this reaction. "I love you, Amina," I replied softly, "but I can't turn my back on what I know to be true. I hope that someday you'll see it too and join me in this beautiful faith." Once we got home, the atmosphere didn't improve. Our once inviting home felt cold and hostile. The Islamic art that had once been a source of comfort now seemed hollow and devoid of meaning. That night, as sleep eluded me, I whispered a prayer to Jesus, asking for strength and guidance in finding His church and for help in opening my family's eyes to the truth. It was then that I felt a wave of peace wash over me, reminding me of Jesus' promise to always be with us. No matter what lay ahead, I wouldn't be alone. The following day, I embarked on my quest to find an Orthodox church. It wasn't straightforward in a primarily Muslim country, but eventually, I discovered a small Russian Orthodox mission on the city's outskirts. With a mix of nerves and excitement, I attended my first divine liturgy. As I stepped through the church doors, I was taken aback by its stunning beauty. The icons, the incense, the chanting, they were all so foreign yet strangely familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite place. As the service unfolded, I found myself overwhelmed with emotion, and tears began to flow. Tears were streaming down my cheeks as I realized that this was it. This was the moment I had glimpsed in my vision of heaven. I felt at home. After the service, I approached Father Nicholas, the priest, to share my journey. Honestly, I half expected him to think I was losing my mind, but instead, he listened with genuine patience. His gaze was warm and filled with understanding. Once I finished telling my story, he said, "God has a way of guiding us in unexpected directions. It seems He has brought you to our church, and we welcome you with open arms. However, I must warn you, the road ahead won't be smooth. Are you ready for what lies ahead?" I nodded, a mix of fear and determination swirling within me. "Yes, Father, I know it won't be easy, but I believe this is the truth. I want to learn as much as I can about the Orthodox faith." Father Nicholas beamed at me. "Then let's start your catechism. There's a lot for you to discover, but know that God will be with you every step of the way." And so began my journey into this new way of life. I dedicated every free moment to immersing myself in the teachings of the Church, attending services, and preparing for my baptism. The profound beauty of Orthodox theology and the rich traditions filled a void that had lingered in my heart for far too long. But even as I was embracing my new faith, the atmosphere at home grew tense. Amina and I hardly spoke, and our conversations often sparked heated arguments. My children seemed distant, unsure of how to connect with this transformed version of their father. The tipping point came when Amina, her voice quivering, confronted me with an ultimatum. "Khalid," she said, "I've tried to understand, but I just can't. You need to abandon this Christian nonsense and return to Islam, or I'll leave and take the children with me." Her words felt like a dagger to my heart. I cherished my family more than anything, yet denying Christ and the Church after everything I had experienced was simply not an option for me. "I love you and the kids more than you can imagine, Amina," I replied, choking back tears. "But I can't turn my back on Jesus and His teachings. They are the truth and the only path to salvation. I hope that someday you will understand and join me in this beautiful faith." Just 2 days later, Amina and my children were gone. The house, once alive with laughter and chatter, now echoed with silence. In losing them, I felt as though I had lost everything: my family, my community, and the life I once knew. However, even amidst this profound sorrow, I found solace in the comforting presence of Christ, granting me strength to carry on. I poured my heart and soul into learning about Orthodoxy. Father Nicholas became not only my guide, but also a cherished friend, supporting me through this challenging yet enlightening chapter of my life. Diving deep into the essence of my new faith felt like a journey of rediscovery. Each revelation brought me a step closer to feeling whole again. After months of exploration and learning, the day of my baptism finally dawned. Standing there in the baptismal font with Father Victor, the age-old prayers floated around us. As I emerged, water dripping away my past, I embraced my new identity as Khalid Rahman. Named after St. John of Damascus, a staunch defender of our beliefs, I felt reborn in a way I had only dreamed of. The time that followed was a whirlwind. I experienced both challenges and triumphs. My former community didn't take kindly to my transformation. There were moments of isolation that weighed heavily on me. Yet, amidst the loneliness, I also discovered the unmatched joy that came from diving deeper into my newfound faith. I attended every service I could, eagerly fasting as mandated by the church calendar, and began to immerse myself in the Jesus prayer. One Sunday, as I helped tidy up after a service, Father Victor approached me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Khalid," he said, using my baptismal name, "your story carries significant weight. Have you thought about sharing it beyond these walls?" His question threw me for a loop. "I've considered it, Father, but isn't there a risk? What if sharing it causes trouble for my family?" I felt a knot of worry in my stomach. Father Victor nodded, acknowledging my concerns. "Those worries are legitimate, my son, but think about the impact. It could guide others who are on a similar quest for the truth but don't know where to look." His words resonated deeply within me, recalling my vision of Christ urging me to take action. "You're right," I replied, mulling it over. "But what's the best way to start?" After some brainstorming, we decided I should begin by documenting my full testimony. Father Victor kindly offered to help with refining it and translating it into Russian so it could be featured on the church's website. We even talked about hosting a series of talks for the local Orthodox community and any seekers who might be interested. Writing down my journey was incredibly poignant. I poured my heart into recounting my near-death experience, the moment I encountered Christ, and my path to embracing Orthodoxy. Each word brought back vivid memories, some so overwhelming that I had to take breaks to regain my composure. Once it was complete, we published my story online and shared it across various Orthodox forums. The response was staggering. Messages flooded in from every corner of the globe, converts sharing their own journeys, cradle Orthodox Christians connecting with my experiences, and so many others reaching out with words of encouragement. It all started when I began sharing my personal story, which caught the attention of various Muslims curious about Christianity. However, not everyone responded with kindness. I soon found myself facing threats from some Islamic extremists who labeled me a traitor. Thankfully, Father Sergei and my church community were incredibly supportive during this challenging time. They stood by me, offering their protection and encouragement. Despite the real dangers, I felt a strong calling to connect the Muslim world I had left behind with the Orthodox Christian faith I had come to embrace. As my story gained traction, I started receiving invitations to speak at Orthodox conferences and events. I found myself sharing my testimony, answering questions about Islam from an Orthodox viewpoint, and helping my church reach out to Muslims more effectively. About a year after I'd been baptized, I received a life-changing message from my oldest son, Ahmad. His words brought me to tears as he told me he had come across my testimony online, which led him to question everything he believed. He asked if we could meet. Our reunion was a whirlwind of emotions. Ahmad had so many questions, it felt like we were talking for hours. By the time we finished, he was in tears, expressing a desire to meet with Father Sergei to discover more about Orthodoxy. "I'm so sorry, Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion after we prayed together. "I regret how I treated you and not listening sooner." I held him close, overwhelmed with joy. "There's nothing to forgive, son. I'm just grateful God has opened your eyes." Over the next few years, I witnessed incredible transformations in people's lives. My testimony was translated into various languages, enabling it to reach Muslims around the world. I continued my journey by speaking at conferences, not only sharing my experiences but also teaching Orthodox apologetics. Although it was a rewarding path, it was not without its trials. I still faced threats and persecution, and there were days when I'd find myself longing for my old life, the familiarity of my past and my family. But then, witnessing someone come to know Christ within the church or receiving messages from readers whose lives had been touched made all those struggles feel worthwhile. 5 years after that near-death moment, I learned that Amina had read my testimony and wanted to meet. I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. When I finally saw her, my heart ached. She looked weary, older, yet there was a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Khalid," she said, her voice quivering with emotion, "I think I'm ready to learn more about your faith, about orthodoxy." Tears sprang to my eyes as I began to tell her about the love of Christ and the beauty that exists within the church. During our conversation, I noticed a spark in Amina's eyes, reminiscent of the light I had once seen in my friend Ahmad. By the end of the discussion, she had decided to meet with Father Sergei so she could start her journey of catechism. It wasn't a simple switch to a happy ending. We had a mountain of issues to untangle and plenty of healing ahead, but slowly, bit by bit, our family began to reunite, not as Muslims but rather as Orthodox Christians. Reflecting on the path I've traveled makes me truly marvel at where I am now. I went from being a devout Muslim to embracing Orthodox Christianity, transforming from a respected figure in my community to a persecuted evangelist. I faced the heartbreak of losing my family, only to witness them gradually come to faith in Christ. Throughout this entire experience, God has shown His faithfulness to me. I know there's still much ahead of me. Countless Muslims still haven't heard about Christ and His church, yet the fear that once gripped me has faded away. I've discovered the truth and have truly felt God's love through the fullness of orthodoxy. Ultimately, I believe in the power of Christ's love. It prevails over everything. Once I carried the name Abdul Malik, now I go by Khalid Rahman, and this is my journey. There was a moment when I found myself in a place I never expected. I died and saw Muhammad in hell, but even more importantly, I encountered Christ and found authentic life within His church. That moment shifted everything for me. The years following my conversion have been rich with growth and trials. Each day reinforces my belief in the truth I found during my near-death experience and the beauty encapsulated in this faith I have chosen. These days, my life revolves around the church's rhythm. The cycle of feasts and fasts, the divine liturgy, and the deep traditions of Orthodox Christianity have become the heartbeat of my everyday existence. Each moment I'm left in awe of the profound depth of Orthodox theology and practice. One of the most significant transformations in my life has been my prayer journey. The Jesus prayer, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner," has turned into my unshakable companion. I whisper it as I walk, while I work, and even as I settle down for the night. It grounds me and keeps me anchored in Christ throughout my busy days. Gaining insight into Orthodox spirituality has led me to explore the writings of the Church Fathers. The works of St. John Chrysostom, St. Basil the Great, and St. Gregory Palamas have unveiled remarkable depths of understanding about God and His unconditional love for humanity. My relationship with icons has surprised me as well. Coming from a background where worship was strictly image-free, I was initially wary. However, under Father Sergei's guidance, I began to appreciate their theological significance, realizing they serve as windows to heaven. You know, my little apartment has become a sanctuary for me. It's filled with icons that bring me so much comfort, especially when I take a moment to pray before them. Life, however, hasn't been a walk in the park. I still encounter pushback from my old community, and there have been instances where I've faced verbal abuse in public. Honestly, I've lost track of the number of threatening messages that pop up online. Yet in those tough moments, I hold on to Christ's teachings about loving those who challenge us, and I find myself praying for whoever stands against me. Meanwhile, my work in engaging with Muslims is blossoming. Thanks to my bishop's support, I've kicked off a small ministry aimed at fostering conversations between Christians and Muslims. We publish materials, organize seminars, and provide assistance to Muslims who are curious about the faith. One of the most fulfilling parts of this journey has been witnessing other Muslims embrace Christ. Every baptism I see reminds me of my own transformation, filling me with overwhelming gratitude for God's mercy. My family's journey to Orthodoxy has been such a blessing as well. When Amina started her catechism, our younger kids followed her lead. Watching them embrace their faith, their eyes sparkling when they receive Holy Communion, and hearing them joyfully sing hymns, those moments bring an indescribable joy to my heart. Sure, there have been challenges adjusting to life as Christians in a largely Muslim environment. They have faced the loss of friends, dealt with snickers at school, and adapted to significant lifestyle changes. But through everything, I've seen their faith blossom. As for myself, I'm diving deeper into theology. With Father Sarge's encouragement, I've started studying in a more structured way. The deeper I delve, the more I realize just how vast and beautiful this faith really is. Serving others has also brought me immense joy, whether it's reading during services, participating in charity work, or even tidying up the church. Each act feels like a heartfelt gift to Christ. Reflecting on my past as a Muslim, it's fascinating to see how God seemed to be preparing me all along for this journey. The emphasis on prayer, the focus on submitting to God's will, and the commitment to moral living in Islam were hints that pointed me toward a fuller truth. Of course, moments of sadness still creep in. I think about the years I wandered in spiritual darkness and the pain my family endured during my conversion. But then I remind myself of St. Paul's promise about God's work in our lives. As I sit down to jot down my thoughts, I can't help but reflect on the incredible journey I've been on. I'm gearing up for a speaking tour that will take me to various communities across the nation. During this tour, I'll be sharing my story and discussing how to effectively communicate faith to those practicing Islam. This is a responsibility I don't take lightly. I'm constantly seeking God's guidance through prayer. Transitioning from Islam to Christianity has opened my eyes to so many profound truths. Chief among them is how incomprehensible God's love truly is. The God I worship now is a far cry from the distant figurative deity I once believed in. He's a loving Father who chose to become human for our salvation. He actively reveals himself through the church and the sacraments, which is such a comforting thought. While I can't predict what lies ahead, I hold on to the certainty that Christ will be by my side, no matter the circumstances, be it joy or sorrow, ease or hardship. That alone gives me immense peace. I'm Khalid Rahman, and this is just a chapter in my ongoing story. In my past, I was enveloped in the misconceptions of Islam, but thankfully, Christ reached out to me, clarified the truth, and welcomed me into his church. Each day, I am grateful for this vibrant new life in him. Glory to God for all that he has done. If my journey from Islam to Orthodox Christianity resonates with you, I encourage you not to keep it to yourself. Like, follow, and tap the notification bell so you can stay tuned for more impactful stories of lives changed by Christ. And don't forget to share this video with anyone you know who might be on their own quest for truth. Your simple act of sharing could be the spark that ignites someone's journey toward a fuller faith.